You feel like you're doing everything in your power and yet nothing is working. If you are in this in between, you do come out the other side. I wanted to do an episode on the big lessons I've learned both in my 20s and my 30s. You are not supposed to have your life figured out in your 20s. That's just not how the world works. You have to make the decision that you are actually too good to settle. You will look back on the work that you put in and be so proud of yourself and realize that all of that quiet work that you did culminates into everything that you know today. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Dream Bigger podcast. So I am back with a solo today, and it's actually been a minute because I was so busy doing interviews, and then I was away. Actually, I don't think I've been in studio for almost a month because we were first in the Hamptons for our Clear Protein Plus launch, and then came back for 2 days, and then went to Europe for like 2.5 weeks, and then I got back home. I was sick for a week, and now I am finally back to feeling like myself. And so I'm really excited to be back in the studio doing a solo, which, by the way, you guys have been asking for. And it's very sweet. It's really nice to know that you guys do enjoy these solos. And so what I thought would be a fun episode to do is, this is actually my birthday week. So I don't know when this episode is going live, but my birthday is August 3rd, and I'm currently recording this on July 28th. And in true Leo fashion, obviously my birthday is not one day, but a whole week in my world. And so I wanted to do an episode based on the big lessons I've learned over the last, I would say, I'm turning 34. And so I'm like midway into my 30s now. And so these are lessons that I've learned both in my 20s and my 30s and 30s thus far. More lessons to be learned, hopefully. But I wanted to share these with you because, I sometimes do reels on little bits and bobs of lessons that I've learned, and sometimes they really resonate with you. And so I wanted to do a more in-depth episode on exactly that. And where I wanted to start, I thought a good jumping off point is talking about your 20s. So you are not supposed to have your life figured out in your 20s, you guys. I don't know who was responsible for the marketing of your 20s, but let me tell you, it is a confusing time, and we put so much pressure on ourselves to believe that we are supposed to have our entire lives figured out when our prefrontal cortex is barely developed. So all that being said is, I think your 20s are really important for a reason. I don't think you should be coasting through life. That is not the purpose of your 20s. And I remember, I think it was 20, I was 22. Yeah, I think I was 22 or 23 when I read this book. It's called The Defining Decade. I actually recommend that every single person in their 20s read this book because it taught me how important it is to kind of have direction in my life in my 20s. That doesn't mean that you're supposed to have it all figured out, but that means that you kind of put one foot in front of the other and take lessons from each stage in order to make informed decisions on what's next. So as an example, my 20s were a huge jumble. So if you don't know, I did my undergrad in nothing related to what I'm doing right now. It wasn't even anything related to what I wanted to do post-grad. So my degree was sociology, political science, and religion. I initially went into school wanting to do sociology and political science in case I wanted to go to law school. Where I thought it would be a good idea to go to law school, I actually don't know, because it's not like I ever, that's kind of like the track that I was on in high school. In fact, I was always someone who was interested in writing, and I was a very creative person. I just think that, I wanted to give myself a cushion to pursue law because that was like a safe career bet. Okay. But very quickly throughout, oh my gosh, I have like an eyelash in my eye. That's what I've been poking at my eye for. I think it's out now. But very quickly, like as I was going through my undergrad, I realized I'm probably not going to go to law school. And so when you graduate with a degree in exactly what I did, it wasn't, a degree that could take you into a professional career. Like as an example, Nish was a mechanical engineer. His career path was very solid. mine was really murky. And I decided when I was graduating that I wanted to, in fact, go into something creative. And I initially thought it was going to be PR and then journalism. And so that's kind of the path that I went on. So when I graduated, I did a like first volunteering in PR, then it was a PR internship. In the middle of that, I did my post grad at Condé Nast College in London because I had no educational background in journalism at all, and so no one was hiring me. And I lived in Canada as well, and so over there the kind of lay of the land is not as vast as it is in the US. And so I did my post grad in London, got my after that did my did an internship in PR, decided that that wasn't for me. Then I went into journalism. And so that's when I started to work at Elle. And you can see that my career path had so many twists and turns. And what I decided to do with every twist and turn that I took was I would take inventory of the things that I enjoyed and the things that I was good at, and then filter my next career move based on that information. And, while I was working at Elle, I had my blog that grew. And then that's when I decided that it was the right thing to do to take a leap of faith to then go full time on my blog. And also, I then started my podcast. And so, you know, everything I did, I dipped my toes into things knowing what I liked and what I didn't like, and I would use the data from my previous experience to make those decisions. And then obviously ultimately I ended up starting Array, which I started, I believe, when I was 28, almost 29 years old. That's when we launched. And so you can see that your 20s, you're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're just supposed to put one foot in front of the other in order to figure out where you're supposed to be. And I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves in our 20s to have it all figured out when that's just not what it's about. And I don't know of a lot of people who have their lives figured out in their 20s. But which brings me to my second lesson, which is that timelines create so much unnecessary pressure. So again, that doesn't mean that you don't pursue things with urgency, but it just means that putting these like timelines, these fake made up timelines on ourselves about, oh, I need to accomplish X by this age, it doesn't do good for anyone. And, I think that social media, some people paint it out to be this like really bad thing, but I think social media, you can use it as a tool that you want it to be. You can either use it to show you examples of people who have succeeded at whatever area of their lives, whether that be in a romantic relationship or business or career, whatever. There are people who have landed on those things at different ages, and you can use social media as a tool to guide you to those people. Or you can look at the 21-year-old a business owner who exited for however millions of dollars and make yourself feel really bad about it. And you're past that age, and then you put all these unnecessary timeline pressures on yourself, and it just doesn't make any sense. And as I said, I started Array. Actually, I was 29. That's what I'm reading right now in my notes. So I wasn't 28. I started Array at 29. Okay. So this was 2020. Yeah. So I was 29 years old. And I remember I would put so much pressure on myself and feel so bad about myself in my mid 20s, being like, you are such a failure. You haven't made it. And look at all these people who have. And I'm sitting here on the other side of that, telling you that it's all fake. Okay. Like all of this narrative and the mean things that we say to ourselves, we're making it up. And that's just not how the world works. And your success, it shouldn't be tied to what age you get there. What you should be doing at every age is ensuring that you are striving to be the best version of yourself, that you are growing as a human being, and that you're getting closer to whatever goals that you are hoping to achieve. Which brings me to my next point, okay? I want to talk a little bit about the in-between. Now, I spoke about this on a TikTok, which did extremely well, and then I obviously brought it to Instagram in a reel. And I want to talk about this because it's actually really, really important. So basically, the in between is this period of time when you are working really hard. You're working your ass off, and it just feels like you're doing absolutely everything in your power to get to whatever goal you're wanting to get to. But the progress feels really slow. And this is a very difficult time, I think, that everyone goes through. And yet, it's not very well documented at all. And my theory is that people don't really document the in between because it's literally a heads down work time. It is not this time where it's a highlight reel. None of that is happening. It's this behind the scenes, like quiet work that everyone does. And everyone sits in this phase and they feel extremely frustrated with themselves. And, you feel like nothing is working. And, this example can span across so many different parts of our lives, whether it is, you've been trying to get more fit as an example, and you've been at it, but maybe things are not going exactly how you want it to go. And then bam, you stick to it. And then like all of a sudden, you feel yourself getting so much stronger or fitter, or you look better, your clothes fit better, or whatever it is. It's the same thing with career as well. And I'll give you an example, which is what I shared in this video that I made, which you guys really liked. But if you've not seen that, I'll repeat this story. So 2 years before I started Array, we went to Milan. And I remember going into the Prada store in Milan. And, I've always loved fashion. And I remember going to that store and I came out and I was crying. And I remember feeling so frustrated with myself that I wasn't where I wanted to be in life, that I wasn't at the point where I could get these things that I wanted. And the thing is, it wasn't about the material things, okay? It was just this feeling that, oh, I have been doing everything that I can, working so hard, and I'm just not at the level of success that I think I should be at. And, I remember feeling that way and, obviously continuing working. And then 2 years later, we launched Array. And 2 years later, my life changed. Obviously, it wasn't like an overnight success because so much work was done before time. And, our journey with Array has obviously come with so many twists and turns. But had I known, like when I was going through this in 2018, that just like 2 or 3 years later, my life would be completely different. I wish I'd known that, but you never know that when you're in the in between, and that's the whole thing, that you feel like you're doing everything in your power and yet nothing is working, or the movement is just so slow and you get down so hard on yourself because everyone else seems to be moving so much faster than you. But what you don't realize is that those people were also in the in between and they're just coming out the other side. And that's what we see, And so I want to remind you that if you are in this in between, you do come out the other side, and everything that you are doing does in fact pay off. And you will look back on the work that you put in and be so proud of yourself and realize that all of the work, that quiet work that you did, actually culminates into everything that you know today. So, don't be hard on yourself if you're in that place. The one exception here is when it comes to business. So what I mean by this is, when it comes to business and you are just working on the same thing, but it's not working, you may want to actually take a hard look at whether you need to pivot your strategy or what it is that's not working, right? Because with business, I'm not talking about the process of building a business. I mean, like, you've taken something to market and something's not working, like it's just not catching traction. You shouldn't be working on the same thing for like a long period of time if it's not working, because you may just want to pivot your strategy a little bit. So you may then want to do like kind of take inventory of like, okay, like what are all the avenues that I'm kind of doing marketing, or like what is the nitty gritty of the product? How can you attract more customers? So that's a whole different thing. I'm not going to put business into this category in this sense, because obviously you need to know when to pivot your strategy and kind of evaluate what's working and what's not working. So I just want to call out that difference, because I don't want to push you to kind of be heads down on something when it comes to business specifically and a specific idea or a method if it's not working. Like with business, you have to be really quick to pivot, okay? So the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to success, and I put it in air quotes because I specifically mean success when it comes to career. So when you are an overachiever or you are someone who is very career driven, you have to make time for what is important beyond work. And listen, I'm someone who loves my work. Okay. My like Array is my baby. I wake up, I have my dream job. I love doing it every single day. But I have an identity outside of Array. And that has been something that's been really important to me because otherwise, when your entire personality and your entire being is linked to the success of your business, then on a month where things may not be going too well, or you get a piece of bad news, you also then come down on yourself so hard about it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like that still happens with me, but I try to be really stoic when it comes to the business. And I've talked about this in the past where, you know, when things go wrong, I'm not as emotionally, I don't feel as emotionally volatile because Array is just one of the things that I do. And I've learned this from my dad, who has a business and, he's had his business for a very long time. And that's just something that he taught me when I was starting out. And so that's kind of something I've implemented. But getting back to making time for what's important beyond work. So I made the decision, I would say like about a year and a half into Array, that what was the point of having all of these accolades if I had no one to share it with? Okay. No friends because I didn't make any time for them. And, all I did was react when they reached out to me versus actually being proactive about those relationships. So for me, it's actually really important to make time for the relationships in my life and proactively make time for those relationships, because if you don't do that, then you'll have none. And then literally, what are you doing with all your success? Nothing, because you have no one to share it with. And so for me, those interpersonal relationships are extremely important. My marriage is extremely important. I've talked about this before. I am very protective of the relationship that I have with Nish. I mean, we both are. We choose each other. We make time for each other. And, because we want to make sure that our marriage is strong, even outside of just being co-founders. And so that goes beyond, obviously, friendships and relationships. It is, do you have any other hobbies? Like, are you taking care of your health? Is your entire being your business? Because you may not even be as productive as you think you're being if you're not going out for walks or if you're not making time to look after the one body that we've been given. So I'm just being very real with you because these are lessons that I've learned along the way. First year for Ray, I did not walk, didn't go to the gym. I would say actually first 2 years of Array. And then in 2021, when I had that really bad accident where, if you don't know, I fell off a bird scooter, had brain injuries, broke my wrist, like fracture around my eye. It was like very much life threatening. But when I got better from that, I was like, I'm never neglecting my body again, because this is the one vessel that I have. And so I will always make time to go to the gym or, make time to move my body and just treat it right. And so what I mean is, whatever it is that's important for you outside of work, whether that's your health, and our health should be important to all of us. I'm just going to make that sweeping statement, or your relationships or, creative hobby, whatever it is, make sure you make time for it, because otherwise you'll just kind of go through life and then you'll have this successful business or this successful career, but that will be it. And I don't think anyone wants to look back on their lives being like, oh, wow, yeah, I had that one like success when it comes to my career, but I don't have anything else. Like, people actually value their relationships and they value all of these memories and experiences that they've picked up throughout the journey of their career, And so I just want to remind you that if you are on this journey, that's actually extremely important in terms of, everything from your mental health to how you're enjoying the journey of life. Mini lesson here after I am kind of done with this one. So next lesson is kind of a mini lesson, but it is so important, you guys, that I need to talk about it. And that is, you can be good at personal finances even if you were bad at math. Okay. Please listen to me very carefully, because I feel like specifically women, I think for some reason, we are so hard on ourselves when it comes to personal finances. We are, intimidated by it. Maybe you also were someone who was not good at math in high school, and then you're like, oh, I am also someone who can't be good at my personal finances because I was terrible at math in high school. Those two things are not linked. you don't need advanced algebra to understand basic investing, okay? You just know. So I just want to encourage all of you guys and girls, but specifically girls, to go out and understand personal finances because this is something that I wish I learned when I was much younger. I think everyone should be investing and just have the 101s of finances right when they're younger because that pays dividends. And more than that, it is the most empowering feeling to know that you are in control of your personal finances, that you do not need somebody else to kind of look after that facet in your life. It is also so empowering to look at your bills and to know that you have everything under control. And if you're not currently there and that feels like a faraway goal, I promise you, you can get there. Okay. There was once a time in my life where I was so oblivious to personal finances and so ignorant and just I couldn't even imagine being at the point that I'm at right now, but I learned and I kept wanting to learn and get better at it. And so if you're looking for a good place to start, I recommend a book by Ramit. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It is incredible. If you are also looking for a really good podcast episode, I did it with Tori Dunlap. She is an incredible educator around personal finances. And again, like not this like judgmental bullshit. It's just actual facts that will not overwhelm you. And that was a really, really strong conversation. So I highly recommend you listen to that. And then I also had the founder of YNAB on the podcast as well. Also go listen to that one. I also use YNAB all the time for my personal finances. It's really, really helpful. I believe I have a code with them. I think it's Dream Bigger for 3 months, free on the app. So those are some good places to start. But I just cannot stop talking about how important personal finances are, you guys, because it is just the most empowering feeling to become good at it. Okay. And everyone can become good at it. Okay. The last lesson that I have for you guys, and the most important one that I wanted to save for last, is do not settle. So oftentimes I feel like we negotiate with ourselves. Okay. So you are about 65% of the way to your goal, and you're like, that's good enough. As an example, you find a guy that is about 60% of the way there, right? And then you're like, sure, I'll deal with all the red flags because he's giving me like the kind of bare minimum. And, when I talk about dating, I don't mean, have a long list of things that, and they have to match everything perfectly. I mean, have your non-negotiables and don't stray from those things, like don't deal with sketchy behavior and him ghosting you because, he takes you out for nice dinners. Like that's ridiculous. You can have both of those things. Those are actually very basic things that we should all be expecting. So we're like, if it's when it comes to like a career thing, like, oh, I'm 65% of the way there. Like, I guess this is good enough for me. No, you have to make the decision that you are actually too good to settle. And once you make that decision, the decision that you are too good to settle, then I feel like you get really clear about what your goals are and you don't rest until you get there. Because again, you've decided not to just settle for 60% or 40% or 20% of the way there. Like, don't negotiate with yourself. I don't know who we think we're kidding, but that's just extremely, extremely important. And you know what? Sometimes it does take longer and the in-between feels really long, but when you decide you're not going to settle, you just push through it and you get to the destination, whatever that destination is. And of course, like be really self-aware and it's okay for your goals to change, but that's different from just settling for something because it feels easy and you don't even know if you're going to get to the end point. There's a difference there. One is being self-reflective and self-aware, being like, okay, that goal, I know I wanted it at one point, but maybe I don't want that anymore. It's not aligned to who I am anymore. Good, great, no problem. The other is, oh, that goal feels really audacious. Maybe I'm not meant to go there and I'll just go 60% of the way there. Do you see the difference? So anyway, not settling, I think, is extremely important. And the parallel that I would like you to kind of think about for yourself is there are facets of our lives where we refuse to settle, right? And I think it's bringing that mentality to every single thing. So I've given this example in a video before, but I was always, from when I was younger, very clear about the kind of person that I was going to end up with. I was just not going to settle for an average relationship. Like it was going to be one that was truly like unrealistic. And I put that in air quotes, right? Like it was just, I wanted excellence in my romantic relationship. I wanted to be with someone who I was going to laugh with for the rest of my life, have fun with, and I was going to create a life with that people, you know, say that it's like they don't think it's real. You know what I mean? Because like we've kind of taught ourselves as society that your partner is like the ball and chain. I didn't want that. I was like, if I'm going to end up with someone, that better be fun for the rest of my life. And so that is, you know, at the end of the day, what I got. Like I'm very lucky and I'm glad to say that. But when when I realized that that part of my life came easily to me because of the standard that I'd set for myself, and there was no settling there because the bar was just where it was. And so I realized that that came easy to me because that was just the expectation that I had with myself. There was no plan B. There was no second best there. And so I was like, okay, if my relationship comes easy to me, then that means that I can kind of apply that same philosophy to career or health or whatever it is. It's just I aim for excellence and that's kind of where I land. There's no second best. And any time I'm working on a goal and I feel like I'm cutting myself short or I'm not believing in myself to get to that level of excellence, then I do unblocking work in that specific area, because obviously then I'm carrying beliefs that tell me that I can't get to that level of excellence. And so obviously that's the work of life, you know, to kind of figure out why it is that you have been setting the bar so low for yourself. So this was a short and hopefully value-packed episode for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope that these lessons help some of you as well. And with that, I will talk to you guys next week.